I've always been interested in the Civil War and the institution of slavery in America, so I felt what better place to start than my own family. For as long as I can remember life, the portrait of my great-great-grandfather, Isaac Hall, hung in my grandmother's living room. When we were children, my siblings and cousins, we called it the soldier. Well, I remember when I was very young, my grandmother told me that that was her grandfather and that he fought in the Civil War, and that his father was born in Africa and brought to this country as a young boy and sold into slavery. But as I mentioned, Isaac Hall was born a slave in March of 1839 in Sussex County, Delaware, in the service of David Hall, who had owned his parents as well. Now, the Emancipation Proclamation issued in January of 1863 did not affect Isaac Hall. The Emancipation Proclamation only affected those slaves in states that were in rebellion, states that had seceded from the Union. Delaware was a slave state that had remained loyal. But his path to freedom was the War Department General Order 329, issued October 3, 1863. And this order offered all loyal slave owners in the border states, Delaware being one of them, compensation up to $300 for the enlistment of their slave into the military. Well, his owner, David Hall, cashed in on this deal. Now, what it also said in the War Department General Order is that all persons enlisted in the service of the United States would be forever thereafter free. I'd like to read the evidence of title. Now, this is the actual copy of a title to another human being. I, David Hall, of Baltimore 100, Sussex County, and State of Delaware, do hereby certify that Isaac Hall, who has enlisted in the 32nd Regiment, U.S. Colored Troops, Company K, is my slave. And at the date of his enlistment, as aforesaid, he was owing me service for and during the term of his natural life. This is a certificate of award of the Board of Claims, Office of the Board of Claims for slaves enlisted in the service of the United States, Georgetown, Delaware, March 27, 1865. We hereby certify that David Hall of Sussex County, State of Delaware, having proved under oath his loyalty to the Constitution and government of the United States and established his title as to the ownership of Isaac Hall, a slave enlisted at Wilmington, Delaware, on the 3rd day of March, 1864, by Captain D.S. Yardley, in the service of the United States in the 32nd Regiment of Colored Troops, Company K, and having filed a valid deed of manumission and release of service of said slave, is entitled to the sum of $300, which has been awarded to him by this board as a remuneration for all claim to the future labor and service of said slave under the provisions of General Orders, War Department, number 329, 1863. I'd like to read a quote to you. Once let the black man get upon his person the brass letters U.S., let him get an eagle on his button and a musket on his shoulder and bullets in his pockets, and there is no power on earth that can deny he has earned the right to citizenship in the United States. It's a quote from Frederick Douglass. The United States Colored Troop Regiment number 30, the 32nd Regiment, was organized at Camp William Penn in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, February 7th to March 7th, 1864, and then ordered to Hilton Head, South Carolina in April of 1864. As mentioned, Isaac Hall enlisted on the 3rd of March in 1864 for a period of 3 years. Now, the United States Colored Troops, they were the forerunners to the Buffalo Soldiers. Buffalo Soldiers were given the name by the Cheyenne Indian for their fierce fighting spirit and also for the coarse, thick texture of their hair. Now, the purpose of the expedition that the 32nd was involved in, and also the 54th Massachusetts, many of you have probably seen the movie Glory. Well, the 54th was part of this 5,000-man expedition, and the purpose of the mission was to prevent Confederate troops from interfering with Sherman as he was coming up from Atlanta, and also to capture the Charleston-Savannah Railroad. And when I think of the marching that they did, I think of my ancestor and those like him. These men had been slaves all their life. Now they were marching in their newfound freedom. I know their bodies were tired, their feet hurt, but I believe that their souls were no ways tired. And when they mentioned about the fire that was set, when I read the account of the battle, it also said a wind picked up that day, and it blew the fire. So now you can imagine these troops are in a skirmish. They're being fired upon, and it's raining fire down on them. And let's face it, uncontrolled fire can back the best of us up. Well, it put them in complete disorder. But then again, I say that fire paled in comparison to the fire of freedom that burned in these men. They knew what was behind them. The war had become personal to them. They were fighting for their freedom and the freedom of their loved ones that were still in bondage. They were successful in capturing the Charleston-Savannah Railroad. The next morning, the Confederates launched an attack, a surprise attack, attacking the right flank, which was held by the 32nd. But the 32nd was able to rally, hold their position, and maintain their position until General Sherman arrived in Savannah in triumph. So these men paved the way for Sherman's march. Now, having done my research and continue to do so, I felt such a bond that it was no longer a portrait. He's real to me. And I sat down and I composed a letter to him one evening that I'd like to share with you. August 1st, 2009, my dear great-great-grandfather Hall, I am so very proud of you. My pride is overflowing, knowing that you were one of the 209,145 African-American Civil War soldiers who fought to abolish slavery and preserve the Union. I tell everyone I know about you. I'm calling on your spirit to help direct me to find out more about you. You planted the seed of determination in us, your great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren, and so on down the line. We know that our driving force comes from you. A slave for the first 26 years of your life, I can only imagine what you must have felt on that day in March when given your freedom. On November 4th, 2008, 107 years after your death, our country elected its first African-American president. I cried when the announcement was made. I know now that they were not only my tears, but yours as well. On Memorial Day of this year, 2009, President Barack Obama had a wreath laid at the African-American Civil War Memorial, your memorial. Congress has also issued an apology for slavery. Well, grandfather, you can rest easily and peacefully now. You have seen through your descendants, and I quote, the hope and the dream of the slave, unquote. We know that there is still much to be done, but we also know that your blood flows through our veins. We will now take over your watch. So with the aid of some old documents, oral family history, and heartfelt inspiration, I am going to continue to tell your story. I am your ever-adoring great-great-granddaughter, Diane. Thank you. I just have so much pride to be able to stand here before the monument and actually to point out his name on the wall of honor. I'm just thrilled, and I feel a bond here.